Love can be unexpected. Watch as Deku's journey takes a romantic twist in part 2 of What If Deku Found Love in Unexpected Places? Deku x Harem. Don't miss it. Play this music, it goes with the atmosphere of what you are going to read next. And if you are wondering, Musifachu is as big as Mexico City, and like any big city you need the subway to get around it. Finally, how do you get rid of writer's block? Meanwhile, while our characters were doing whatever they had to do, a Ferrari SF90 was cruising through the streets of Musifachu with style and speed, earning the surprised glances of many passers-by, and of course they couldn't help but take some photos. They wondered, who was this millionaire? Why was he strolling around this city and not Tokyo? Was he single? They wondered, who was this millionaire? Why was he walking around this city and not Tokyo? Was he single? All those doubts would be dispelled when the vehicle turned right and drove into a public parking lot. But it wasn't just any parking lot, it was a heavily guarded one, with full cleaning services, of course, and a very expensive one too. How could he be sure that his car wouldn't be stolen? So he thought this was a good place. A man dressed in the typical ballet parking uniform approached the vehicle and said to the driver, "It's a pleasure to see you again, sir. You're not here very often." The man gave the classic Japanese bow. "Hi Yuki, it was about time to take my vehicle out. I hadn't taken it out for a week and a half. Now I wanted to take a ride to relieve stress before going to work." "It's always good to get your stress out," he smiled cordially. "You know what you mean." After paying with his debit card, the crew member got out of his vehicle and then gave his keys to the employee so that he could finally take him to park it. End of music. Finally on the street, he couldn't help but stretch his body, making a small crack sound and then sighing in relaxation. After all, he had been sitting for most of the day, and he had been under stress less than an hour and a half ago. "Well, back to work at the inn," he said in a more relaxed Spanish. It was obvious, wasn't it? The young owner of this luxury car was Izuku Midoriya. He headed to work, which would take him no less than 5 minutes to get there. When he was about to reach his destination, he came across an obstacle, as there was a long line of people wanting to get into the restaurant where he worked. This line stretched for 2 whole blocks. His shift started at 4, and he wasn't going to wait. "I'm glad there are so many people, but at the same time I have a lot of work, that's how it should be," he said, smiling briefly. Although he didn't want to admit it, when he started working he could forget about all his problems for a few hours and think clearly about his decisions. Washing dishes was tiring, but it kept him busy. Why don't you keep yourself busy with something? The mind can think clearly when you focus on one thing. Those were Dr. Yu's words, which inspired him to do what he would never have thought of doing, keeping busy. Was it that simple? He said to himself mockingly. This didn't solve his problems, but it gave him peace. Even if his friends from UA bothered him with that attitude that he detested, he could also get a break from them there. Unfortunately, it didn't take long for them to locate him there and they visited him a couple of times, which he was glad about, because not everyone wanted to pay prices that an adult would have no problem paying. "Hello, Mr. Midoriya." I had finally reached the door of the restaurant. "Hi Takashi, how's the family?" "I'm not complaining, I like this job, I don't miss the gentleman's club anymore." "I'm very happy to hear it." Takashi was a tall, burly man, dressed in a large suit and tie. His most notable feature was that the man had his entire skin covered by a large, hard, black rock. An incredible skill for security duties, as he kept people at bay who wanted to access the place. "Come on sir, I didn't want to be late for your shift." "Thank you," Izuku said as he patted his arm in gratitude. Then he entered the restaurant, while people watched the scene with disgust. Why would an idiot enter without waiting in line? Was there a VIP service without them knowing about it? This situation made some people quickly express their displeasure. "Hey, idiot. That green-haired guy came in without waiting in line. Why? It's not like he's the hero Deku," said a man with NPC features. "Yeah. It's not fair." Then the other people played along. "In case you didn't know, that man works here." Takashi answers disinterestedly. "Isn't there a door for employees?" The same NPC answered angrily. "All the employees have entered through here, be respectful," I answer with the same attitude. This was the man's daily life. As he had said, he liked this job, they were just harmless ordinary citizens, compared to the people he worked with. It was easy to ignore his insults from the enraged idiot, he was going to be kicked out of the line sooner or later. "Thank you Izuku," he said in a low voice, grateful. In Japan, typical restaurants from Latin American countries were not very common, so it was a surprise that a Mexican restaurant had just opened in the center of the city of Musafachu. Its typical Mexican food impressed Japanese palates, which is why it became famous in these parts. In addition, it is not only famous for its food, but for the large number of dance events, which invited the Japanese to dance to the cumbia music, being guided by a guide. You could say that a festive atmosphere was maintained in the place. I wish I could dance now, but I don't have time. Izuku could only hum the music as he washed the diner's dishes, distracting himself from the problems for now. Izuku, I brought more plates. If you want, I can help you, said a girl behind him, who was carrying a large pile of dirty dishes. I already told you, girl, that I don't need help. Don't be a pain, I'm 16, 2 years younger than you, he said, grumbling tenderly, while leaving the plates on the table, next to Izuku's pile of plates. You're still a kid though, she said, laughing a little. Get out of the way. Give me space to wash the dishes. She pushed the boy slightly, laughing. Well, if you want to help me so much, Jessica, I'll leave you, he said, defeated and continuing with what he was doing. I also think that the owner of his own restaurant should not work as a dishwasher but should look to the suppliers, for example. Your father helps me with that, while I take care of advertising and taxes, but that's evident every Friday when we look at the accounting. I never thought that hiring an accountant would make my life easier. Didn't your grandmother tell you on the phone that they are real rats? I trust your father's judgment, and he also had good references at the Shibuya Employment Center. He knows English, so it's easier to communicate with him. She smiled wistfully. The old man has always been like that. He has an innate ability for it, he always chooses his employees well. For her part, her father considered his workers as family, she admired that part of him. You know, I think that if he hadn't picked me up that day in the Nevada desert, apart from the fact that I would have died, I wouldn't have dared to open that restaurant. He could consider this as one of the best decisions he has made, well, apart from being a hero alongside his mentor. And we wouldn't have met you either. Now she was blushing slightly. Our boss in the United States fired Dad and his workers. We would have been deported if it weren't for you. Thank you very much. You don't have to be thankful, he saved my life, without him I wouldn't even have had a future. To be honest, whether it was good or bad, I lived through it all because of him and I will always be grateful. Be it with you or your family too. I'm glad you accepted my offer to go to my country. The poor girl was completely exhausted, and for appearances she quickly turned to where the dishes she was washing were. Meanwhile, our protagonist didn't notice. The bad thing is that she didn't know he was in the mess and the others were in on the game. You know, if you were to marry my daughter in the future, I would pay for the wedding. Suddenly Don Jose, Jessica's father, was leaning against the wall, implying that he had heard the entire conversation. Dad. Now she was blushing and embarrassed. Stop embarrassing me. Don't be a jerk. Calm down, girl, I was just joking, ha ha ha, although admit it, the guy is handsome, the man said with a mischievous look. Which made Izuku laugh. He knew she was joking, both he and she know he has a girlfriend. They even saw her at the restaurant. Unable to remain calm due to her excessive blushing, she told Izuku in a bit of panic. I'll go with Juan to wait on the tables, leave me the dishes, I'll wash them. Without warning she ran like a target, leaving a confused Izuku. Why does she act like the girls who have confessed to me? Nah. She would have no reason to fall in love with me. In fact, I have honestly never understood why my classmates have fallen in love with me, or the others. Izuku had experience rejecting others, but apart from Uraka, he never had enough experience with other girls to know why he liked them. That was one of the doubts he regularly asked himself since he became a hero. Since she was a kid, she always blushed like that and ran away. Don't worry. It always happens to her when she sees a handsome boy. She lied, since she really wasn't interested in boys and love, she preferred to watch Dragon Ball, she'll get over it. Izuku, taking advantage of the fact that he was alone with his partner, had to talk to him about that matter. Sir, I need to speak to your wife alone in our office up there. It's about an unexpected visit from the Prime Minister. Then, Don Jose put on a serious face. For both him and his wife, talking about Prime Minister Haruka was a serious matter. Come on. Bring some beers, we'll need them. Crown or 2x? 2x. So, Don Jose spoke to his wife Maria so that they could both speak to Izuku in private. Once the three of them were seated, they began to talk. I knew what I was up against if I accepted his $1 million donation. I knew I would be in his clutches, literally, that he would have me by the balls and do his holy will. he said as he opened the beer with his keys and drank it, sitting at his desk. We all knew what we were doing, Izuku. Don Jose said, drinking just like Izuku, sitting on the office sofa next to his wife. It was something we decided to accept together, even though you offered us that opportunity, it was our choice after all, Maria said seriously. Mary was Joseph's wife, she had the same features as her daughter, but with shorter hair. She was only a little older and you could see the gray hair due to her age. Shall I speak to you? What did he say? The man said worriedly. Look. I sighed regretfully, I put us all at risk because of a mistake I made before you picked me up in Vegas. The couple looked at the green-haired man in confusion. He then explained to them from the beginning how his trip went, as far as he could remember. Then, he explained to them what happened during the Prime Minister's visit, from when he informed him that he was somehow responsible for the riots that occurred that day, to the fact that in some bizarre way he was married, for now, to 7 foreign women who influenced their governments to free him. After his attack of denial, now calmed down, the minister spoke to him about the problem he was dealing with, and asked that while his lawyers dealt with some way to legally divorce them, because polygamy, unfortunately for Izuku, was allowed in the Japanese civil code, he for his part convinced the girls to divorce him, of their own free will. He explained that for his part, his political party would look bad in the public opinion because the next or already symbol of peace was not an example of a citizen for being an unfaithful to the popular Uraka, who according to the telecommunications minister's own words, no heroine was as famous before her graduation as she was. Worse still, Izuku Midoriya was openly supporting the party that the minister represented through social media. That was beneficial for the upcoming elections, but a scandal of that nature would be a hard blow to the polls. Nezu also said that it would also affect the school's reputation, and its status. Izuku, for his part, had no problem openly asking them for a divorce, but unfortunately, he for his part knew it was difficult due to their determination to free him from a trial in the United States. It was more than obvious that they would show it by trying to get him to stay with them. Finally, in order for Izuku to keep silent on the matter except with the couple, they made him sign several agreements. The last thing the Prime Minister said before Izuku left was this. Those girls will be here in a week at the most, or if they are already here. You better get a divorce, with a serious and intimidating voice. By the way, I hope to eat tacos at that restaurant in the center of Musafatchu. I hope it is still open when I get there. That made him shiver. Every part of his body felt like goosebumps, his anxiety increased and his hands sweated terribly. That was clearly a threat against them. Once he left the office, he felt terrible guilt for having involved them in this. When he finished his story, the couple's faces also showed concern and dismay. Had he really threatened them? Izuku didn't know what to say. But incredibly, they quickly recovered, and more relaxed, he said. Married to 7 girls, a sigh in frustration. What a shame, I thought my daughter would be the first. Didn't you say that polygamy was legal here? That? Now Izuku was confused. I would like to too, my fatso, but wait until I at least solve this problem, he said laughing lightly. I just hope that they all agree to be part of your harem, because if not it is not a good idea to play with a woman's heart. It would be dangerous for you as well as for them, but more so for you, we are more sensitive about that. Please, don't end up like that kid from the program that my daughter showed me, decapitated. Because they are taking it lightly, because they are joking. No kid, I'm telling you as a narrator, they like you and they want their daughter, already crazy about you, to stay with you. They just say it as if it were a joke to pretend. Seeing Izuku's confused face at their jokes, they both thought they had already had enough fun and were more honest about the subject. Izuku, you were very kind to give us a chance at life. Thanks to you, Jessica is studying at a better school, and I have a job that no longer affects my health, which was construction. But we know this can't last forever. Don't blame yourself if you fail, we'll go back home after all. Since Izuku had offered them to immigrate to Japan, she shouldn't get her hopes up that this was going to last, and Jose knew it well as she did. No, I don't plan on failing at this. I consider them my family now. I won't let the minister affect them. Now Joseph was going to say. Look Izuku. Suddenly, an employee opened the office door and said. Bosses, a guy from Remnant wants to speak with one of you to take care of an account problem. Now a problem had suddenly arisen. Sunday night. Author, okay, time to continue with the story. It was a relaxing weekend, now I have my ideas clearer and my homework done. Have you already handed in your constitutional theory homework? Author, no way. After our good friend the author, the idiot, has finished his duties, I will continue narrating this story. You ask, how will you do it, handsome narrator? Well, I have already borrowed his laptop, and now I can continue with what I planned. Well then, let's get to it. Go. Izuku answered his employee, who left without further ado. Then he turned to see the couple, and said to them, I won't be long. Don't worry, I think we should talk about this another time. Maria said, drinking the last of her beer. Also, I have to talk to the vegetable distributors tomorrow, and I need to call to confirm. The man also enjoyed his last drink. Come on, Maria, we have to continue supervising the kitchen, let's let Izuku deal with the customer. Okay, darling. Without saying anything else, the couple left, leaving Izuku without saying anything else. I won't fail, I have to get a divorce. If I don't, I'll lose them. So he also continued on his way to address that problem with that client. Izuku had already grown fond of Don Jose and his family. He knew that the threat of the Prime Minister was very real, and he could not allow himself to fail. In addition, he was reassured by how simple it could be. It was just getting a divorce, it was not rocket science. Although he could not be confident because of what he had said previously, his high determination that he would stay with them. To be honest, I haven't had as much uncertainty since I killed Shigaraki as I do now. After thinking about that, he decided to stop worrying about it, at least until he got back to his apartment. Then he could think better about his strategy, how he would tell them that he didn't want to continue with their marriage, where to say it, what to do in case they refused, etc. When he finally reached the dining area, he saw a tall, fair-skinned young man with blonde hair and dark blue eyes arguing with one of the employees. They were located near the cash register where diners were charged. The employee was quick to notice his boss and then apparently told the young man to wait a moment. He then approached Izuku and said, Boss, I'm glad Juan is here. I'll call you, said his employee with a big red vein on his temple. We have a problem. This Remnantian doesn't have enough yen in cash when it's time to pay, and then he wants to pay us the rest with lien. The world had only been getting to know Remnant for 10 years. It had only been 5 years since the first talks of bilateral relations had taken place. Everything was new, even the currencies in this case. Lien? There is no currency exchange for that currency here, only in Tokyo. That's the problem, we can't accept those cards, and the young man keeps insisting on paying with it. We got to the point where I decided to call him instead. Good job, Pedro, she said, touching his shoulder. Go on, go rest, your shift should have ended already. Thank you, boss. Happy, Pedro said, who had already retreated to the employee room. Meanwhile, Izuku would approach the young man to see how to solve this. It is well known that Remnant speaks a language very similar to English, but with different variations compared to the original language. So talking to them was not that difficult if you knew the English language. Of course, the accent was the difficult part. It was like watching a German try to speak English. He could not imagine the headache his employee Pedro had trying to understand him. Greetings, my name is. Then the blonde stopped him saying, I speak Japanese, there is no need to try to speak our language, said the young man with a reassuring smile. Phew, I thought we'd be using Google Translate for half an hour. Hello, my name is Izuku Midoriya. I am the manager of this establishment. What is your problem? He couldn't say he was the owner for obvious reasons, and the others knew. So, together with Don Jose, he told the employees that they were just managers in case they asked. My name is Jean d'Arc. My problem is that I came here to eat food that supposedly comes from a nation called Mexico, and then I ran out of yen, and I only have lien to pay the rest. I don't know what to do. The problem with this is that the lien is not yet accepted in all currency exchange shops, only in Tokyo they are promoting them. This is difficult. Suddenly the young man seemed anxious. The problem is that I am in a hurry, because a couple of friends will arrive in less than 3 hours at Musafatsu International Airport. And I have wasted a lot of time here. I don't know how we could resolve this. He looked very upset now. Now the young green-haired boy had his hand on his chin, thinking. Look, how about you stop me with lien, and with the yen you had to pay me? That? Look, there are rumors that they will accept lien at a bank my boss knows. I'll just tell him to ask if he can exchange currency. Thank you. Suddenly his attitude became more cheerful. Then, already at the cash register, he already paid for his meal. Only Izuku told his employee to set aside the lien from today's earnings, not until they managed to exchange it for yen. I don't know what to say, thank you very much for supporting me with this. Although you might get scolded for my irresponsibility, haha, Jean said while scratching his head in a sign of nervousness. You're welcome, it's not easy either, I mean, The Ren mansions barely made themselves known in our world. It hasn't been easy for us, half the world doesn't understand you and then you have to get your currency changed. Also, not everyone looks at you with a good face. Nah, racism is everywhere. I say you better go and pick up your friends. Oh yeah. Hee, I'm going, he said in a hurry, and in a comical way he left at the speed of light. After the young man left, Jessica's voice was heard. You're too kind sometimes, not everyone is as good as that boy. Izuku noticed this and laughing lightly, he turned to talk to her. It was less than $60 worth of food, I was planning to pay anyway. He shrugged, not paying any attention to the matter. The bank you talked about never existed, Izuku, you only have worthless cards unless we go to Tokyo, she said, somewhat discouraged. Jessica sometimes feared that her kindness would be taken advantage of. Especially by her friends, because when they came to the restaurant, they asked him to give them a discount for being an employee. That made her angry. Look on the bright side, they could sell very well on eBay. Selling his All Might figures gave him something for his car, as he had spent most of the money the minister gave him on the restaurant investment. Less than 2,000 yen, at most, she said skeptically. With that I could give you something for your birthday. Then in a somewhat exaggerated way, with a huge blush, she got too close to Izuku and said to him. It better be a trip to the amusement park. It would be fun with your parents, he said, somewhat awkwardly, since she was too close. In his eyes, she looked like his excited little sister. Besides, I think we're going to end up selling nothing, ha ha. Yeah, you're there, eh? While those two were talking about other things, now let's focus on someone else. The same blonde named Jeanne d'Arc was walking in the large municipal park Suecia, while talking to someone in his native language with his communication device, called Scroll, which is an object that works like a foldable holographic tablet. Hey Weiss, are you at the park? The girl answered him. Right behind you, fool. She turned to look and it was her friend, Weiss Schnee. She is a young, pale-skinned woman with pale blue eyes and long, white hair. Her most notable feature is that she has a scar that runs vertically across her left eye. His most notable feature is that he has a scar that runs vertically across his left eye. I see you enjoyed your walk around this place. Jean said good-naturedly. We only arrived 2 days ago and there is still a lot to see. My husband wasn't lying, his country is beautiful. Do you want to sit down? Waff. Suddenly a little dog caught the attention of those present. Svi wants to too, he's tired from our walk. The aforementioned dog is a tricolor Pembroke Welsh Corgi with a black head and grey eyes. One that inspires tenderness even in the author and I. Isn't that right, Svi? You are a cute little dog, Weiss said in a sweet voice, stroking his head. Once sitting on a park bench, while Svi was freely sniffing some roses. So, it's him? She said seriously. If it is him. Reconciling the facts. It would be that our investigation that we did on that search engine for the Earth, Google. It showed us that he was an apprentice hero as he had told us, but for people, he has merits as a professional. Deku, that's what he called himself as a hero. She said thoughtfully. Since he told us his name was Hisashi, it made our search difficult, but almost making a mistake in the marriage certificates gave us his real name. Izuku Midoriya. After that, it was easier to find him. Combined our search, your connections, and luck, we were finally able to find him working in what would be his restaurant. Who would say that he turned out to be an entrepreneur? I hope you manage it well, because I would be ashamed to be the wife of someone who neglects his business, she said seriously and calmly. From what I saw, his restaurant was full of customers. He was very kind to his employees and diners. At that moment, he was the same kind guy we met. Weiss blushed as she remembered what he was like when she first met him. While Jean, with a warm smile, remembered how he became friends with the green-haired boy. I'm glad to finally see him, you know? I felt in Vegas that he was like a brother to me. But there was one thing that Jean absolutely disliked. The bad thing is that he didn't recognize me. That? Now Weiss was shocked. As? Weiss, I know people who lie or pretend. And he didn't do any of the above, he should have recognized me. What happened? Now Weiss was worried about this. Since, many of her theories about her husband's disappearance fell by the wayside. Worse, if she were to lose her memory, would her love for them also be forgotten? That ate at her inside. Weiss, I think it's time to call the others. Jean said seriously. While Weiss was still recovering from her initial shock. I think so. The others should know what they had just discovered. We must move quickly. His girlfriend can still influence him. he said, taking out his scroll. Yang must remain at the airport to pick up Nora and the others. I'll call Ruby. Weiss also took out his scroll. The night was early, the other wives were already starting to act. All to achieve a single goal, Izuku Midoriya. Jiru had finally gotten out of her training, which had been categorized as hellish. No one wanted to talk to each other, including her. They just wanted to go to their houses or apartments so they could rest. Since they had to go to school again tomorrow, fortunately Aizawa had allowed them to skip physical activity, and that he would tell the other teachers to do the same. Sighing in frustration, Aizawa sure did take it out on us. The worst of all is that it's the least we deserve. Many didn't want to accept it, but everything has changed since the trip. The girls, while not as close due to the seed of discord that Izuku represents, were now worse. None of them could be considered close friends now, more than anything self-imposed rivals. The worst part of it all is that now not even the aforementioned guy they like has spoken to them lately. And they know the reason. It was more than obvious that it was thanks to their participation in drugging the guy and having him for themselves. The consequences of this were reflected in the guy's attitude towards everyone in general. She, for her part, apart from the fact that her relationship with Izuku is no longer better than it was, felt immense guilt. Would that sound hypocritical? She wondered that herself once. Because when she felt guilty about her actions, she thought about the boy's well-being. What must he have suffered while in the desert? Did he get hurt? Did they hurt him? Her conflict lies in the fact that she thought the same as the others before committing her sin. She never thought about his well-being. Now that she feels guilty, and thinks about it, she feels like a hypocrite. Regardless of what she feels. Even though she wanted to fix her relationship with them, she still felt a bit of anger about something else. Besides being rivals, it's how they have handled their feelings with their actions. They never thought about the boy's well-being, they never went and asked him if he was okay, they only felt regret for why their actions affected their interests. That is, Izuku's relationship with them. Even though I don't feel like I'm better than them, I did ask him at some point if he was okay. He still remembered the first day of school. His distance was just beginning to be noticed. After class, she tried to ask him if he was better, at least that's the only thing he could do better, right? What he answered did surprise her. No, Jiru, I don't feel better. But, I appreciate you asking. That day was the last time she saw him smile genuinely at school. It was also the last time she spoke to him alone. Line 2 Metro, Asakusa. Will arrive soon // Suddenly his thoughts were interrupted when the horn at the station near the UA announced that his train was about to arrive here. Then he ran with his backpack in hand, even with his body in pain, towards the platform where his train would be. Finally, there was another thing that bothered him. Now, with this, we have to pretend even more. When? Without warning, her phone rang, and when she saw who it was, she quickly answered. What do you want? Hello, Jiru-san, Uraka said cheerfully. Are you available? No honorifics, Uraka. Also, don't you remember the shitty training we had today? I can barely stand in the station. Jiru, there is a sushi restaurant 3 blocks from my apartment residence. A very good one, and I would like to treat you. Now? He thought doubtfully. Let's go. In a jovial voice. You live 2 stations away from me, it's not that far. If you don't want to arrive at your apartment so late, you can stay with me. If she's honest with herself, she sometimes wishes she could go back to those days in first when she and the others got along and there were no obstacles in the way. No offense to Izuku. Resigned, I think so. I hope you have an extra futon. Okay. Now he would have to change his course. I wish I could smoke right now, he said as he watched the train arrive. She had finally arrived at the station where her friend would meet her on the platform, or so she said when she texted her. Where will you be, Uraka? She said, a little desperate. Why didn't she arrive? And 10 minutes had already passed. Suddenly someone tapped him on the shoulder, and when he turned around he found himself facing a cigarette half hanging by its packaging, being held by Uraka. I know you need it now. Without saying anything she accepted it and put it in her mouth. Also, this too. He also offered her a bottle of water. Smoking now after having done that hellish training will make you thirsty like you have no idea. So I also bought you a water. I accept that without hesitation. Why this kindness all of a sudden, Uraka? She found this strange. First he invites her to dinner, then to his house, and finally this. Why? He touched his fist thoughtfully. I think the correct answer to your question would be that you are the only ally I consider trustworthy and you are not a whore like the others. He couldn't help but remember that conversation he had with her on that bus in the United States. Besides, there's also a reason why I wanted you to come with me to dinner at that restaurant. That? Suddenly she was already walking away. Come on, time is money. Confused, she had no choice but to follow her. What are you planning? She doubtfully told her friend's intentions. Do you like it? Jiro had never come across such a cheap and delicious sushi restaurant before. He could enjoy that raw fish with complete pride. It's delicious, he said with his mouth full. This restaurant is my favorite, Uraka said with nostalgia. This is where Izuku and I went on our first dates. Now Jiro had a bad taste in her mouth, and it wasn't the food. After he finished his bite, he put his chopsticks aside and said bitterly, "Is that why you wanted to bring me?" "No," he said, knowing Jiro's annoyance. "I brought you so we can pick up where we left off that day in the United States." Now he knew her intentions. "Your condition?" "Exactly. Don't you remember? Our friendship/alliance in exchange for a secret of yours." So months later, finally. "We'll pick up where you left off, eh?" he said with bitterness in his thoughts. "I guess my fault for what happened to Izuku, and you beat me," I sigh in frustration. "I think it's more because of the other thing, don't you think?" Uraka raised an eyebrow at that, while Jiro frowned. Her anger grew even more. "Don't abuse." "I won't do it, friend." Suddenly Uraka took out her phone, fiddled with it for a few seconds, and then passed it to this Jiro. "I told you that by accepting your apology you were my ally. But not the benefits that come with it." Jiro was shocked by what she had happened to him. A list created with a special app in which she compiles every girl that has declared her love for Izuku since she met him. Even her name was on the list. "I told you to wait until things in our relationship improved, so I could tell you the benefit. But we are in a crisis, so this could not wait. Then I will tell you." "That? There are chances that I'll consider helping you so that Izuku will accept you." That's exactly what happened. I couldn't believe it. But something didn't fit. "So? Why the list? What does it have to do with anything else?" "There it goes. Because of our problems in our relationship, every day there are more possibilities that he will be unfaithful to me, and you know the consequences of that." Unfortunately, I knew it. Besides, foreigners worry me. That would be worse, like that fucking Mexican waitress with a great body that works with him. Or that English/Japanese idiot. I don't know why, but I feel like at some point she could meet Izuku, and not continue with that guy of a husband. Now Jiro was curious and had a big, burning yandere instinct inside her at the same time. "Tell me more." "That list is the enemies we have to fight. I can't do this alone, so with our alliance we can face them." That idea was beginning to please him. "Before we go into more detail, I want to tell you that I didn't just invite you here to hear about our alliance. I also invited you here to discuss our first attack plan and strategy." "What would it be?" "Face Izuku for the truth. We can't face them if our relationship with him is weak." He was about to tell me something before Aizawa took him away. "So, if you help me with that, we'll have the advantage. So tomorrow we'll go to his apartment." "Tomorrow? We have class." That was so sudden. We had. An annoying sound could be heard throughout the room. The constant vibrating of his phone beside him added to the disturbance of his beauty sleep, as he would call it. "Shut up, narrator," the boy said, throwing his pillow straight at the camera. "Your voice doesn't let me sleep, and neither does that stupid alarm. Don't you remember that you don't have class today because you're married?" "Yes, that's right." Suddenly the boy stood up in a hurry. "I have to hurry." First the boy grabbed his cell phone, located right on his side table. Apparently the whole group started sending me messages. Most of the messages were from her classmates, asking why she left class so suddenly, and also asking if she is coming to class today. Instead of replying to each of them, he preferred to send a direct message to all of them through the group's WhatsApp group. "Guys, I have a personal matter to attend to right now. So I'll have to be away for a few days. Aizawa is aware of this, so I hope to see you again next week." As expected, the chat was flooded with messages that he preferred not to answer. Then he decided to check the other messages that were not from his classmates. One that brightened his morning was from his favorite girl. Of course, all written in Spanish. "Izuku, I'm on my way to school now, I hope you slept well. It's a shame I won't see you at the restaurant soon, but I know you have a personal matter. I hope it gets resolved. I send you XOXO. Jessica." He answered him. "I send you hugs, girl, put effort into studying. I know you can do it." Then, I check another message I wasn't expecting to receive. No one but her favorite psychologist. "Hey Izuku, hey, I was thinking if you could stop by the park after we had our coffee. The station that takes me home is right past that place. It would be like extending our friend's outing, what do you say? UT. Our imbecile protagonist decided to answer. Sure, I'll bring my jacket because it's cold. I think you should bring it too. It didn't even seem weird to him that she called him by his name. Lastly, there was another message from his girlfriend, Uraka. Uraka? What does he want? Izuku-kun, honey, look, I'm going too. I didn't finish reading the message because the doorbell of his apartment started ringing repeatedly. / ding dong ! What? Who could it be? He said while checking the time on his cell phone, exactly at 7:30 in the morning. So, still in his pajamas and with his phone in his hand, he headed for the entrance to his apartment. He simply looked through the small glass hole that allowed him to see who was outside his door. A girl? The girl had ashen hair. Another characteristic that defined her was that she wore a witch's hat with a pink ribbon tied around it, a black jacket with pink collars and lining over a red vest. In addition, she also wore black boots and long black socks. Hello? She spoke Japanese with a Russian accent. Who are you? Copacabana, Las Vegas, don't you remember? Suddenly, a slight flash of memory made him remember the last thing he did before forgetting everything he did. Not before receiving a slight momentary headache. I went to a bar called Copacabana. Without thinking, he quickly opened the door to be face to face with that girl. Hello Izuku. Now he was between his back and a hard place. Hello. He didn't remember his name, it embarrassed him. Without warning she pulled his pajamas and dragged him towards her, kissing him on the spot. A very passionate one, to be honest. Izuku, surprised by this, dropped his phone. He was still receiving messages from his girlfriend. When their lips parted, Izuku was left in shock as she blushed harder and harder. So many months passed and I was dying to kiss you, darling. She couldn't help but touch his lips, even feeling the heat of Izuku's lips provoked her. Unable to bear the surprise any longer, he simply exclaimed. Who are you? Now he was already on the ground, very nervous in front of her. Don't tell me you've forgotten my name. Suddenly a dark aura flooded the entrance and the hallway, scaring the green-haired boy, who increasingly retreated as the girl advanced. So, I see from your expression that you have done it. Every step he took was a world of terror waiting for him. How could you forget my name? That witch, whose ashen hair flutters in the wind, shining with so much beauty and talent. Whose eyes squint involuntarily at the sun. Now she was realizing that she is a bit. That girl whom men have desired and failed to love. A beauty worthy of a queen. Too much arrogance. That she was too much of an idiot to fall in love with a boy, give him her heart and marry him. She said, clenching her fists in fury, while a lump formed in her throat. Now she was dejected, Izuku said, watching as her aura of fear faded, and her expression changed to a dejected and sad one. My name is Elena, for your information. She said, sighing in frustration. I can't imagine the reaction your harem will have about this. Wait. Harem? Now Izuku had doubts. Were they really aware that they weren't the only ones? Are you aware that I've married 6 other girls? I thought. Yes, I am aware of the others. But unfortunately for you, they don't know that they weren't the only ones you proposed to. To tell the truth, I'm the only one who knows, she said, touching her chin. Touching his chin, the green-haired boy noticed a shiny ring on one of his fingers. It can't be. It's my grandmother's ring. It was the same ring Izuku had planned to give to Uraka, which he had given up for lost when he had already left the United States. Now it was on her finger. Worn with great pride, Elena said, showing her hand and separating her fingers to show the finger where the ring was. I don't know the customs of this country. But, I think my name would be Elena Midoriya, right? Now her eyes were shining with stars, implying that she was excited by the idea. Now, everything he was planning to do after his shower went out the window. Now he was faced with one of his wives and he didn't know what to do. To start with, he wasn't even presentable enough to talk seriously with her. I don't know what to say about that. Now she was serious. We have something serious on our hands. You have lost your memory, and we don't know why. Now she offered him her hand so he could get up. He accepted it and stood up. I used several spells that night, I'll need to check if any of them had any side effects. He said as he approached the door, now that I think about it, that's why you never claimed your cell phone from me. Wait. What? Suddenly, She pulled out from her left pocket the mid-range cell phone that Izuku had when he left Las Vegas. I think after our time together in that cabin, you put it in my bag by mistake. He was about to take it off, but she was faster and made it disappear like magic. You owe me a date, Izuku. You promised me you'd call me to move to Russia. Even though you had my number written down on a ticket, you hadn't called me and I thought the worst. So I had to spend time with that jerk Benedict Kozlov asking for favors, until I finally found you. Then I had to do the marriage paperwork at the Japanese embassy in Moscow. By the way, your phone was well protected. I was only able to access it 3 weeks ago, because of a hacker. I beg you, please give me back my phone. Now he was losing his patience. Nope. Suddenly she put her fingers on Izuku's lips, silencing him. Shh. Be thankful that I let you have a harem, because if it were someone else, I would kill you for cheating on me with another girl. From her statements, he was feeling chills. Are we in agreement? Now he could only nod his head. As she did so, she removed her fingers from her lips. When she got serious, she was very scary. I don't care that you've lost your memory, there are ways to get it back. Even with this situation, you are my husband. And I would like to spend quality time with you as such, considering my place in your life. Many of them don't know each other, which gives me a bad feeling. So, for now, I was thinking of spending more time with you so you could apologize for not calling me and making me lose 4 valuable months to make babies. But now, we have another problem that I will inevitably have to find a solution for. And staying here longer would take up more time to verify which spell went wrong. She was already right at the entrance of the apartment. What are you going to do? Suddenly she magically pulled out a card advertising a luxury hotel and gave it to him. At 8 p.m. I want you to go to the Bushido Hotel less than 2 kilometers from here. I want you to meet someone special. Who will be arriving at the airport in less than an hour, he said, looking at his pocket watch. Who? A relative? My mother. Now it was a typical date where the bride's family met. Just what I was going to do with Uraka, he thought, frustrated, not realizing that there was a woman more beautiful than her and she was his wife. Thanks, narrator. You know what you're saying, I give the camera a thumbs up. Now Izuku had a date with his wife and mother in less than a day since he found out he had gotten married. You better look presentable. I don't want to lie to her any more than I already have. I want her to see the man I love as someone good, just like you showed me. Now she had kissed him again, a shorter one this time. She was now leaving the place. But before she left she said, "Oh, by the way. I want a boy and a girl of my own," she said while sending him a kiss, and that floating heart penetrated Izuku's heart and left him in shock. He had already retired. Now he was on the ground in enormous shock. In his pajamas, being pathetic, his day had started with an ambush from his wife Elena. Who, without letting him know her intentions to divorce, left him defenseless and had agreed to meet his mother. Please, whoever is on top, don't let my other wives be Yan. But the fool was unaware that he had a particular taste in women. Meanwhile, Uraka and Jiro were traveling on the train to the station where Izuku lived. Uraka was frustrated, as he had apparently left her on read. She had only read the first few messages and then never read the next ones again. It had been 15 minutes since then. Shit. She said with noticeable frustration, since when does my boyfriend leave me on read? While the brunette was complaining, Jiro was thinking about something else. Are you really going to get him to tell us the truth? I don't think so. Jiro was doubting the success of Uraka's plan, it was too direct. He could assume that maybe she still thinks that Izuku is still vulnerable when he is in her presence, but with what's been going on lately there was less chance of that happening. Izuku is already unfamiliar territory for his classmates and her. It's like he had been so skilled at hiding his other self, that the trip to Las Vegas was the only thing that managed to bring out his true personality. Why didn't you show us that side of you, Izuku? Would our relationship have been different if you had opened up from the beginning? She was in love with Izuku, but if she wanted to win his heart, she had to be objective and see why he walked away from the group. Come on, we've already arrived at the station. Suddenly, Uraka stood up and headed for the train's exit door. Jiro followed her. They walked a couple of blocks until they reached the Honkai apartment complex. Just to enter, one has to go through the reception, where the manager greets the inhabitants or guests of the apartments. Hello, what can I help you with? I'm here to see my boyfriend. Uraka said authoritatively, while Jiro was dying of embarrassment. Izuku was already fed up with surprises, so he decided to take refuge in a manga library and stay there all day until he thought of his next plan of action. He had to come up with some way to deal with his other wives. I have to keep a low profile. Fortunately, having sunglasses and wearing a Vitor wig helps so that no one recognizes you. In fact, he daringly dressed up as Vitor's signature character from Nosotros Los Guapos. He literally cosplayed a character that no one on this side of the pond knows. Thanks for the gift, Grandpa. His grandfather Emmanuel had given him this costume for Christmas, with his funny excuse of flashback. Kid, you can wear this cool costume and go unnoticed in Japan. And who better than the guy your grandma watches on TV while cooking? You can hang out with pretty girls without being recognized. Grandpa, I have a girlfriend. Izuku said angrily while eating his apple and pineapple salad. A classic Christmas meal. Time will always prove me right, and you know it, eh? The old man winked at him while laughing lightly. Izuku, on the other hand, deep down he had to be right. That old man had been right about a lot of things in the past. But on the other hand, he was confident that it would never happen, because he loved his girlfriend. Once he finished chewing his bite, he said, Yeah, the day I finish using this nonsense to avoid being caught cheating on my girlfriend, or to avoid being recognized for this same purpose, I'll thank you and treat you to tamales when I get back to Mexico. It's a promise. He said sarcastically, while promising with a classic gesture, to put his hand on his abdomen while raising the other. Note. A. Clear. End of flashback. I owe you the tamales, old man. At first he didn't think this would work, but so far no one has even bothered to look at him. It was a great breakthrough. But the final test for this to be 100% effective was to approach a normal couple and say hello. Who is this weirdo? He said with a contemptuous look. I think we should go, Yuki-kun. The girl and apparently her friend left the place where Izuku was, leaving him with his hand outstretched. If it were me, at least they would have recognized me. This is 100% effective. Wow, much better. It's a good thing he'll never meet these people in the near future. And no, Yuki lost his god power so he could be with Yuno. Let's just say they live happily together in this reality. Once he experimented with this costume in this municipal park, he finally decided to go out and take the bus to the library, which would take him only about 15 minutes to get there. But something unexpected happened. Suddenly a girl came walking in the opposite direction, and unfortunately for Izuku, she was very familiar. Oh no. It's her. He said in a low voice. The girl I saw in that photograph with me at the riots. I'm screwed, he cursed in Spanish and in a low voice as well. She is a white-skinned, thin girl. Her hair is short and messy, grayish-black with a particular red dyed lock located in her bangs. She has blue eyes and her pupils resemble the shape of a gear. At first glance she appears to be a rather tough girl. Even in the way she walks, with her hands in her bags and her clothing, which consisted of a black and white sports jacket. Another characteristic of his was that he carried a large guitar case on his back. I think if she was so attached to me in that photo, it's more than obvious that she's my wife. I must avoid her at all costs. He would continue passing by and everyone would be happy. But just as she was standing next to him, she turned to look at him and said, Hey, old man. He knew Japanese very well. Do you know where the Honkai apartment building is located? No way. How the hell did they get my address? Faking a more masculine voice, yes, it's 15 blocks from here. It's a bit far, you should take the train to the Shinamai station. Thank you. Without saying anything, she continued on her way, but not without catching a particular scent. While Izuku, disguised, increased his pace towards what was the exit. He was very happy to know that his dear wife did not recognize him. Suddenly, a hand grabbed his shoulder with overwhelming force. He was now in a cold sweat. Did you think I would forget that perfume your grandmother gave you on your 17th birthday? Now the girl had a demonic voice. First, I curse my good habits regarding my personal appearance. Second, how the hell did you know that? Unbeknownst to him, he was already on the ground, while she was holding Vitor's wig, exposing Izuku's green hair. You still have the nerve to hide from me, she said furiously as she threw the wig forcefully on the ground, your beloved wife. Suddenly Izuku remembered his grandfather's words when he asked him about girls once. My son, if you see a scorned woman, run. Oh. I knew what was coming. I will use the secret technique. Suddenly Izuku ran with all his might in the opposite direction to the exit. Nigerian Dian. Suddenly the girl screamed. I'll beat you like God. It was a hunt. Almost like a female lion hunting a bunny. That was what Izuku was experiencing right now. He had to speed up his trot. Damn it. Why didn't I warm up? Suddenly he was getting cramps. Come here and take responsibility. They seemed to run endlessly. Fortunately, though, there was no one around, as he was taking her to a more empty section. One that connected more with Musafatsu's signature forest. If I get any closer to the forest, I'll lose her. What did you say? Suddenly, she was already in front of him. That made him stop dead in his tracks. Last words? Izuku knew he was about to receive an unforgettable beating. So he said it no matter what the circumstances were. Who are you? That made her fury increase even more. Now she was on another level of spite. What the fuck did you say? Now the green-haired man didn't see coming when a fist charged with inhuman strength was launched at his face and threw him a couple of meters. He used the black whip to hold on to the trees. Suddenly, she dropped her case on the floor and lunged at him. Meanwhile, let's just say things got a little too intense for comfort. We'll spare you the details, but Izuku wasn't exactly in control of the situation. Iety. Let's say that without their powers that make them special, a hand-to-hand battle is something else. If you want to take a few seconds to pause while the fight ends, I've sent you a couple of memes. Help. No. This is too much. No. Not the ultimate move. I surrender. I surrender. Well, it seems the fight is over. Let's focus the camera on what interests us. Now the girl was riding on the boy's abdomen, while she was hitting his arms, which were covering her face. However, with much less force than before. It seems that he's already tired. Suddenly he stopped hitting. You know. Before you judge me, I want you to put yourself in my shoes. Now she spoke in a more depressed tone. Imagine, you suddenly meet someone cute, you fall madly in love with him, and all of a sudden, he proposes to you. On the same day you met him. It was a risk, but deep down you knew it would be worth it. So I did that. Now he began to feel a little remorseful about himself. Not only that, but I gave him my heart, trusting him completely. It was a moment I thought would last forever. Shit, what the fuck did I do? I hope Uraka never finds out. Then, spending almost an hour and a half planning a future with that person. Being so excited that she imagined. Growing old with him, having children too and a place to live. Let me finish shit. Now his temper was rising. The best thing was to keep quiet and continue listening. Then, after all those nice words and empty promises, that person told you that he couldn't go with you that same night to live the life you were hoping for, because he had things to do. Then, he told you that you would see him in 3 days at the airport in San Francisco, your place of residence. And from there, you would get married in church, having already done the legal paperwork. Izuku now felt like a piece of shit. So, you go back home, you tell your family and other friends that you got married, you beg them to accept your partner, to meet him. Then, the day came, he never called. Well, maybe he didn't answer your calls or messages, but he promised to come, right? Well, no. He never came. Suddenly, some tears fell on Izuku's clothes. Looking straight at her face, he noticed that she was definitely crying. After that day, they told me to forget you and file for divorce. But no. I was still stupidly in love with you. I loved you so much that I waited for you outside the terminal for days. I didn't eat, I didn't sleep, and I started having problems with my job. All because of you. Now she was clenching her fists furiously. Do you know how embarrassed I felt when the airport employees told me to forget you, and the police too? Now Izuku didn't know what to do. After that, I spent a month and a half trying to hate you, but I failed miserably. I still loved you, and that feeling didn't diminish at all. Even though I tried dating other people, it never worked out. I was still married, and it made me happy to know that I was your wife. Finally, I didn't give up, and I tried to find you by every means possible. I even had to resort to my sister. Now she was clutching his shirt tightly. Do you know what it means to ask a favor from someone who is known in politics or has contacts with it? In my case, worse, because she was my sister. Believe me, I know, and it's not pretty at all. Sigh, after long procedures, revealing surprises like the fact that you were Izuku Midoriya and not Hisashi Midoriya. What an idiot I was. Seriously, do I consider myself a good person? I came to Japan with our valid and corrected marriage certificate with the illusion that by seeing me we could settle our differences. Restart our relationship. After all, couples always have fights. Now, just when I was close to locating your house, I found that you wanted to avoid me and seemed to recognize me. Why? And you still have the nerve to ask who I am? She was crying harder now. Why are you playing with my feelings? Why are you so cynical? You don't want to know about me? Is it true? Tell me. Don't you love me? Tell me. To forget you. Tell me you never loved me. That you never care. So that my heart doesn't suffer anymore. Izuku hated it when someone was suffering, his instinct was to help the one who was suffering. But now, he was the one who caused it and he couldn't think of a way to help her. I can't tell him I want a divorce, it's too much. With every passing second, there was a greater chance that he would do things he would regret. I love you. And it inevitably happened. That? Without warning, Izuku stole her lips. Meanwhile, Uraka kicked a trash can with a tenacious fury. Where the hell are you? While the show was being set up, Jiro was enjoying his morning cigarette. Meanwhile, his patience was at its limit. It will be harder than I thought. A. Your plan doesn't work, accept it. B. Calm your emotions, Izuku won't want to see that side of you. C. Do you know him well? They kissed briefly, emotions running high between them. Izuku. Ryuko. Luckily, I was able to see her name when her purse fell out as we kissed on the floor. She felt a rush of emotions, a nervous giggle escaping as she rested her head on his shoulder. Are you okay? She whispered. He gently held her close, feeling the tension between them, while she whispered something softly. Yes. They sat on the grass, holding on to each other. The weight of everything they had been through made the moment feel surreal, beautiful. There was no turning back. Guilt crept into Izuku's mind, but in this moment, he couldn't pull away. He had to face the consequences of his actions.